a film of mine in Chicago, and afterwards somebody from the audience came towards me and said, "You are the right director for an idea for a film I have." And it turned out to be the B-52. Of course, I knew what the B-52 was at that time, but it didn't happen to me that I thought it would be worth to make a film about it. So we talked a little bit. I went back to my place and did a little bit research, and a couple of weeks later I visited a place near the Air Force base in Arizona, and there were B-52s out in the airfield on that Air Force base by the hundreds, old non-functional B-52s. They do that because, and other airplanes are there as well, and they do that because there's no corrosion there. The air is very dry, not much rain, and so they keep usually in a working condition. But the B-52 were supposed to be scrapped because of a treaties. Reagan had made a deal with the Russians to destroy the strategic potential on both sides. Strategic means, in that sense, any weapon that is supposed to carry nuclear material, nuclear bombs, and such.
And after this first visit, how did you develop the rest of the work? How?
Yes. Well, first of all, what I saw there convinced me immediately, just through the physical presence of old airplanes, that there is a subject for a documentary, a big subject, a subject that would actually be interesting in itself, right? Very often you have to make your subject more interesting because everybody doesn't know about it, right? And has no idea what it is, what you might talk about. But there was a convincing statement done by all these wrecks of airplanes already. So I did a little bit more of research, and I discovered a lot of stuff. And once you're working and talk with people about it, it has this snowball effect. Yeah, people hear about it. My grandfather was a pilot there, or my grandfather was an engineer at Boeing who built this airplane, and so forth. And so all of a sudden, the subject grows and gets a vast contour. Yeah, it's a big frame. You realize, and that happened, and so this made me very curious. And I'm talking about 1995. Next year, during my first little spring vacation, I went there with a little crew and did the first filming. And so actually I wrote a proposal that somehow found the interest of the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation is supporting the arts, visual arts, but also filmmaking. And so they gave me a grant so I could continue next year. It was in 1997. So we are talking actually about a very old film, right? And that helped me to get funds, more funds. Yeah, not in America, though, because America doesn't really make a lot of doesn't free a lot of support for let's say non-commercial filmmaking and film production. There's no money, and so this was the beginning of it. And most of the funds for the film came from Europe. So German television gave me something, some German film funds gave me, French money was in it, and also Swiss money and so forth. So we had a decent foundation to make a film. And
as you say, the film nearly shows and touches like many different aspects surrounding the B-52,
yes.
Once you have filmed all this material, how did you start organizing that huge amount of like encyclopedic work?
This is the way how I work. I never make a script, as people these days do for a documentary film, but I collect a huge amount of knowledge about it and information and pictures and also testimonies of people and so forth. So this lays a good groundwork for a documentary, especially if you decide to make the actual shooting kind of meeting with something that you know about, but you have never seen. Talk to people you have never talked to. Go to places where you never have been yet. So this, I think, contributes to a certain freshness. It's never stale. That very often happens when you make films and are over-prepared, I would say. So there's still this rest of something new is evolving. This is a unique situation. The camera is rolling, and it's never been shot before. So this was important. And on the other hand, of course, I had to work with the U.S. military. So the Pentagon would have to agree on this film, which means with an agreement with them, you also move within the structure of the military. Because let's say that the military is full of press people. They have press offices. So they're used to contact people from the outside who don't know much, who are maybe curious, and also maybe even asking questions that are not very comfortable for them, but still they know how to deal with that. So this structure was all of a sudden open for me, for us. And so with some kind of preparation, so we were ready for the shoot.
The airplanes we fly today are 37 years old, but airframe-wise, they're fairly young airplanes. The H model did not fly in Southeast Asia, so it didn't build up all those hours on the airplane that the D model did. We wore the D models out. The H model, most of them have something in the neighborhood of 14,000 hours, which isn't a lot of hours on a big airplane. So the airplane physically can last for a lot longer, whether they'll decide to keep upgrading the avionics and so forth.
Well, everybody should make the films they want to make, right? And so I take the privilege to make the film I'd like to make. So I don't really care about it. And in fact, they called me documentary essayist as well. So I'm under that label, although I'm always maintaining I do documentaries. And if you think they're essays, okay. But of course they touch knowledge, they touch experiences, they touch history, and they touch thoughts and thinking and such. So and to a certain extent, each let's say essay film is dealing not with a given subject, but kind of invents its subject and defines what its subject is. So there's no subject beyond the film. Yeah, it's an accumulation of something. But in a way, this film is it as well. You could also claim that it might be a film essay, yeah, because it's definitely dealing with watching images, listening to sounds, and having to think as an audience, coming to terms with these facts. And this coming to terms, I think, is a definition of documentary. Yeah, coming to terms with facts. Yeah, that's what documentary is, right? So if it has the form of the essays, or a straight or more narrative form, or some other outline, it's not as important anymore after that.
It gives us an ability to have a heavy presence overseas very quickly that nothing else can give us.
I kind of felt necessary to implicate the ideas of recycling, right? In a way, whatever military is doing, their idea is destruction. So they produce airplanes, or let airplanes be produced, but in the end, it's the function or the purpose of that airplane is to create destruction, yeah, to destroy things. But here you discover their own destruction is somewhat implicated in that. Yeah, if they don't destroy the world, in the end they destroy themselves, right? So what do we do with the leftovers? Yeah, and I saw for once there is a complete, you could say, subculture of reusing the bits and leftovers of the airplanes. For example, the nose arts, the girls that are on the nose of the airplane, or other drafts or pictures. There are collectors for that. For example, some people collect the whole cabin, front cabin of B-52s, and make bars in the cellars of their houses for themselves out of it, right? And you sit in ejection seats where the pilot would be and have your beer, right? So this, and it goes on. Yeah, for example, we met an artist who had the idea that he wanted to get all the cabling out of the B-52. You could imagine this, the B-52 has like 35 miles, which is 50 kilometers, of cables running through it, back and forth. So it's in a way a communication system in itself, yeah, like a telephone system in a city or so. And he wanted to take off the mantling of the cable and just have the sheer copper of the cables. And he wanted people in a place, in a city, in an American big city, he wanted to give them hammer and they would beat all the cable of one airplane until it would be a flat sheet of copper. Yeah, and he called it Angst collector. Angst collector means fright collector. Yeah, because the B-52 is a huge, impressive object and a dangerous project, so it's associated with fright. And if you see one flying over you, you certainly do have fright. You are frightened. So it's very impressive. And he thought if he's having people just by chance turning something new out of these copper cables, it would release their fright. Yeah, and they would at least have less fright. Yeah, so it never happened. Yeah, he couldn't get actually the copper cables out of the B-52s because it's worth way too much money, right? Because big companies go after that, yeah, and he couldn't pay their price. So that's another interest, yeah. Just so as I said earlier, and your question led me there, that the recycling of the B-52 of military materials is out there. Yeah, it's an industry in itself already.
Also, it's a political symbol. When you forward deploy B-52s, the other side knows you're serious. As you know, the first strike launched against Iraq was B-52s. Yeah. The first attack against Kosovo was B-52s out of Fairfield.
Yeah, and there's another idea when we made the film, is that, of course, we are living in times where one job after another goes. And a lot of people are out of work. But they're not only out of work, they lose whatever qualification they had. To make objects from plastic, synthetics, doesn't take a lot of qualification anymore. I would say, in almost all nations, the old type of worker who's knowledgeable, who knows how to move with their body, who has some intellectual or needs to have some intellectual capacities in order to do the work, these workers are gone. Yeah, and the only ones that continue to exist and live on and to fulfill this old-fashioned socialist idea of the worker, yeah, being an emancipator for whole societies, that means, is only left in the military industry. They do work that needs high qualification. Unfortunately, they are not socialists anymore because they identify with the work they are doing, like what a good qualified worker should actually do, right? So there is no future beyond military use of their work, beyond that at this point, yeah. But still, you find this leftover section of what was the beginning of the workers' movement 150 years ago.